Hello everybody, how's it going? I'm the Tmeister and welcome back to the Timbukton Region, more specifically the town of Averdeen, just on the outskirts. So in this episode, guys, we're going to be building a large commercial area that's just on the outskirts of town. We're also going to be working on a whole bunch of residential districts around town and also the town's main high school and a few other interesting things. This is sort of going to be an all-around general episode. We're not going to focus on one specific thing. So it should be quite interesting. There's quite a bit to be done here. So the first thing on the to-do list is to construct this interchange, and it's sort of going to be the main entrance into the town. It intersects with Main Street, so it's going to support quite a bit of traffic, and I want it to support that traffic very efficiently. So I'm going to try to build long off and on ramps to handle a lot of vehicles without affecting the actual main highway. So I want to make it as efficient and as simple as possible, so I'm just going for the classic half cloverleaf design, and I think it should do fairly well. There's going to be 3 entrances into the town. There's going to be one east, one in the middle, which is this one, and there's going to be one a little bit more west of town. So all 3 should sort of distribute traffic evenly, I believe. So I guess we'll just see how that goes a little bit later on once we start to construct, you know, a bunch of different services and residential districts and whatnot around town. So right now I'm just trying to get everything to look as smooth as possible. And what I generally do for these intersections is I sort of start off with a rough outline, and as I go along I try to smooth everything out as much as I can. So using the Move It tool, it's pretty effective. It's pretty easy to use. The only thing, it's kind of tricky when you're dealing with curvy roads. It's sort of hard to get the curves to look as smooth as you might want them. But nonetheless, it's a really efficient tool. It's, you know, at this point it's a must-have when you're building these sort of roads. And it's especially useful when you're dealing with different elevations, whereas before you sort of had to gauge everything as you were building it. Now you can just sort of plop everything down and edit it as much as you want afterwards. So it makes building a lot easier, and the results that come from that are way, way better. So now what I'm going to be doing is texturing the area a little bit. So we have our main off and on ramps complete, and I just want to add a little bit more detail to that. And to do that, I have downloaded a huge line pack a little while ago on the workshop, and it makes building these interchanges really simple. You have double yellow lines, you have all sorts of short and longer white lines. So I mean, it's limited to your creativity with these kind of things. Here I am just building the off and on ramp sort of entry points. Initially I was planning to build these really long merge lanes to sort of merge onto the highway, because back home we have these super long merge lanes. They're like 500 meters or 800 meters long. So, you know, you can really take your time to merge. I've never seen merge lanes as long as the ones that we have at home. So to do that in the game would require quite a bit of work. I would have had to use probably the Invisible Roads mod, which I don't have at the time, or I don't have right now, and I would have had to use ploppable pavement as well, so it would have required a lot of work, and I didn't really want to go into that much detail. I mean, it wouldn't really affect the efficiency of the interchange at all, because, you know, we all know Sims, they don't really care about properly merging, if you know what I mean, if you've seen my my Drive It videos. So anyways, I decided to disregard that and just go for the classic short merge lanes. the next part is to completely detail the interchange, and I'm going to show you guys how to add the barriers and signs and all that stuff. I'm not going to go into too much detail by showing you like all the fauna and whatever that I add afterwards. I think I can leave that for off camera, but that's pretty much it. What I do is just lay down some guardrails and signs. I'll even add some chevrons in a couple locations. Basically, how I know where to put barriers in these cases are to either put them on the outside of a curve, so like in this case I put them on the outside of this loop, or if there's a little bit of an edge on the side of the road, I'll put a barrier. Other than that, I mean, you don't really need one. It's just extra props for nothing. So wherever I can get by not putting barriers, I mean, it's just time saved, and it's not totally necessary everywhere. I know that a lot of European highways will have barriers on each side of the highway, the whole length of the highway. Typically in American or North American situations, you'll only have barriers where they're really needed. Pretty much any highway, you know, in the middle of nowhere won't have any barriers whatsoever. It's all open space. I also like to add chevrons on the outside of very sharp turns, like in this case. It just makes things look a little bit more realistic and cool. So as you can see, there's a fair amount of work that goes into creating even a small interchange like this. It doesn't have to be that way, really. I just, you know, prefer it be, you know, really nice and whatnot. For pretty much all of the interchanges within the Timbukton region, I'm going to try to add as much detail as I possibly can. Hopefully I don't reach the prop limit at any time, really. I'm kind of worried for Aubrey City at this point. I mean, it's getting pretty huge. So anyways, we're not going to worry about that right yet. We still have quite a ways to go. What you're seeing me plop right now are complete lifesavers. I forget exactly what they're called. They're like barriers or something, or highway walls. And the first version that was released on the workshop was a little bit of a pain to use. Whenever building bridges, especially with the prop snap it tool, it was hard to get them to go underneath your overpasses. They would always try to snap on top of them, so it took quite a while to place them how you wanted them. And also with the first version of these, it wasn't possible to lower them into the ground, so your bridges had to be a minimum height in order to go over these sort of walls. But now with the revised version, they're automatically sunken into the ground, so then, you know, you can raise them to whatever height you want, and, you know, it's really simple to even place them under bridges and all sorts of stuff. So these are, you know, a really good asset to have. And what you just seen me do there, I plopped down some transport truck trailers just to make sure that they clear the bridge. I like to get my bridges as low as possible to get it to look, you know, I find the look is a little bit better whenever bridges are not like, you know, 30 feet in the air when they don't have to be. So I usually just test the height of the bridges by plopping down some transport truck trailers. So at this point, the interchange is pretty much complete. The only thing I have to do now is to add some foliage props. But I'm not going to do that on camera. You'll see a little bit later in the episode what the final product is going to be. Now what I'm going to move on to is to build a little bit of road infrastructure around town. More specifically, we're going to get into a sort of quiet neighborhood, a more luxurious neighborhood where typically you'd find older people. They go there to retire, you know, it's their retirement homes or what have you, and this is going to be in this particular location right beside this little bay here. So as you can see, it's going to be lined with, you know, little private roads. It's sort of going to be one of the most secluded places in town. There's only going to be one main entrance into this little subdivision, so we'll get to that a little later in the episode. And also, to come later in the episode, is we're going to build a large park in this area right here that you see on your screen. It's sort of going to be, you know, your regular family-oriented park. So it's going to have a lot of tourist traffic, and it's going to be a big field with some trails and nice trees and fauna and all that sort of nice stuff. so we'll also get to that a little later. But for now, as in all of my videos, I can never work on the same thing for too long. I have the attention span of a monkey. Well, not really, but when it comes to city skylines, I do. Well, see, what happens is sometimes I'll start to work on a particular project and I won't find any inspiration, so I just sort of go work on something else that doesn't require like a heavy amount of thinking and planning, such as this bus terminal that will service the high school that's right here. So I'm gonna work on that for the next couple of minutes just to add some parking lines and, you know, decorate the area a little bit. And while I was doing this, I was sort of planning what I wanted to do for the surrounding areas I mentioned a minute ago, such as the park and the residential district. So I'll let you enjoy this for a couple minutes and I'll get back to you in like 2 minutes. Alright, so still working on the high school at this point, and I got sort of carried away and I thought might as well just finish the project and then I'll move on to some other things later on. So for this project, I sort of wanted to prop the area a little more. I thought that the high school was a little plain just on its own. And what I'm going to do in a second here is this large grass field that you see behind the school, I'm going to fill that in with some football fields and I believe a soccer field. I'm not too sure. This was built a little while after the editing process. So yeah, I just didn't really like the colors that these were popping up. So I sort of wanted this orangey brown color that you typically see on these sort of fields. I don't know about you guys or where you're from, but me being from Canada and going to a French high school, football really wasn't all the rage. You know, hockey was like the big thing in high school. So, you know, I don't have much experience with football. I don't even know like the rules or anything like that. So, I mean, I'm not even sure if this whole setup looks right. I mean, I think it does. I'm just basing myself off of pictures. Alright, so the high school is pretty much done at this point. I'm going to add a little bit of detail off camera. You know, I don't want to bore you guys with too much of that. And now we're going to move on to the main feature of this episode, which is going to be, oh my god, I was almost going to say Aubrey City, and then I was almost going to say Timbukton, and oh my god, guys, I'm all mixed up. Averdeen's main shopping center. It's not going to be too big because I didn't want to out-proportion, you know, what a realistic size for this town would be. But it's going to be your average size shopping center for a typical American town. So we're going to have a supermarket, a pharmacy, some few little restaurants like Subway, McDonald's, you know, your typical fast food restaurants. We're also going to have a couple of banks, some small shops. So nothing out of the ordinary for a typical Canadian/American town. So what I wanted to do here is to create the most realistic parking lot / area that I could do. So I'm going to fill it in with some curbs and props, and I'm going to add a little bit of trees later on, make the area look nice. And usually, well, not usually, but in a lot of cases in older towns or older shopping centers, you'll find some more mature trees between the curbs. If you go to any new shopping centers, you'll notice that in most cases they would have planted some trees in the curbs. Well, as you all know, those trees will eventually grow into big mature trees. And that's the sort of look I want this area to have. So it's been here for a while. It's not the newest kind of buildings. It's not the most luxurious shopping experience. But for going grocery shopping and stuff, I mean, it does the job for a small town like Averdeen. And I suppose what's nice about it too is it's right on the other side of the street from the high school. So I guess the high school would provide a good economy for this shopping district. You know, students would go out to lunch, go to the Subway or whatever restaurant it would be near. So we could pretend that that was sort of one of the large motivations to build the supermarket here. And this, I've gone through a couple of revisions while building this. You know, I had to go through a couple of scenarios and play around with this area to get it to fit the way I wanted it. So that is pretty much it for the first part of the shopping center. There's going to be two separate buildings. The first part is our pharmacy. I think we plopped down like a Subway or something, as well as a bank, a Wells Fargo, I believe. Is that like a credit union or something? I'm not even sure. We don't have those in Canada. But anyways, here we have a Chipotle and a supermarket. I'm not quite sure what brand of supermarket that is. It might not be North American at all. But nevertheless, I wanted it to look a little aged. You know, I was just mentioning a minute ago, this is not the newest sort of shopping area. So we're going to be adding a little bit of detail to that. I've also added a restaurant right by the highway here. It's highly visible by passing motorists if they were on their way to their destination and they just wanted to stop for a bite to eat. It's a very visible building from the highway. While building this project, I always have in the back of my mind the prop limit. I'm not really sure what it is or how many props is the limit. And I know that you can download a sort of mod that lets you know how close to the limit you are. And I don't have that, and I've been considering getting it. I just, you know, don't really take the time to go in the workshop and actually do it. But you know, this whole Timbukton project is going to be really huge, and you know, while I'm not afraid of reaching the prop limit right now because we're only building Averdeen, which is a small town, once we get into the actual city of Timbukton and all the surrounding villages and towns and all the coastal areas and all that, I am sort of worried that we're eventually going to hit the prop limit, and that's not really something I'm looking forward to. So the whole principle behind this project is I want to add detail to the point where it looks believable and realistic and actually nice, but at the same time I don't want to overdo it. You know, I know you can get some pretty amazing results when you go all out with props and detailing and all that stuff, but you know, for two reasons that I don't go too deeply into it is, one, I don't have the time, and two, you know, it's just not the focus of this project. I know that there's a lot of YouTubers out there that create these amazing creations in the game, you know, that you wouldn't even think was possible a year or two ago in City Skylines. And I mean, the progression that we've made with mods and such, it's just absolutely astounding. But for this particular project, that's not going to be the main focus. So I'm just going to add enough detail so it'll look good from a distance. I mean, it's not going to look bad from really close, but it's not going to be the most heavily detailed area, I guess. Alright guys, so in behind the shopping center is going to be a regular sort of residential district, and this is not going to be like a residential street that you would find in a town. It's like a road that was there. It's been a long time, and it's sort of gotten swollen up by the town around it. So for this particular area, I got a lot of inspiration from my trip to Maine earlier this summer. and this little forest that you're seeing me build right here, it's sort of a natural barrier between the shopping center and the residential area. And what inspired me was during my trip to Maine, I noticed that the foliage and the forest were changing a lot as you went more south into Maine. So in New Brunswick, or in the Maritimes as a whole pretty much, we have what's called the Acadian forest, and it's basically like a 50-50 mixture between pine trees and deciduous trees. And you know, I live in this sort of ecosystem every day, so I don't really think of it all that much. But as I went further south into Maine, so you get to like Portland and all those sort of places, I started to notice that there were far less pine trees and a lot more deciduous trees, and they were a lot bigger than they are in my part of the world. So, you know, I really thought that it was really nice. You know, we don't have like such big oak trees and all that stuff where I live, and what's cool is while we were driving around in Portland, everything sort of seemed to be nestled into the forest. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I'll just give you guys an example. Where I live, whenever you have like a mall or any sort of residential or a commercial section, there always seems to be like a huge field between the tree line and the actual building. And when I was in Maine, I noticed that the trees were a lot closer to the buildings than here. So I don't know if it's like a sort of building style that's sort of unique to each area. Not really sure. That's just a little quirk that I noticed, and I thought that it was pretty cool. It looked nice. So other than the large shopping center that we have here, which is mostly like corporate companies and larger chains, this area in Averdeen is going to feature a lot of mom and pop shops, a lot of independently owned businesses, and that's the sort of thing that you're going to find in the majority of the Averdeen region. It is a small town. You don't typically find any like Walmarts or Best Buys and that sort of stuff in small towns. So we're going to sort of shy away from that in Averdeen. But of course, in Timbukton, there's going to be a plethora of different big box chain stores and things like that. Now, that's pretty much going to be it for this episode, guys, but don't leave right now. There's going to be a little cinematic scene of what we've built in this episode as usual. So I really hope you like this episode. It was super fun for me to be able to present that to you guys. Then for the next episode, I'm not too sure what we're going to be heading into. It's sort of go with the flow with this whole project, you know. But anyways, guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to my channel for much more content on the way. And with Christmas coming up, guys, in just the next couple of days here, I wish you all the best. You know, get some rest, spend some time with your families. It's really important. So until the next episode, guys, please take care.